Well, welcome everybody to this Meet the Coach session today with Ged Glynn. I'm really pleased that he's been able to join us because you've got very interesting backgrounds both in the UK and overseas. So as usual with these podcasts, I don't do a long intro. I simply say, welcome Ged, thanks for coming along. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a coach?
Well, thanks for asking me, John. I was very lucky as a player to play with a lot of good captains. And the captains were coaches in those days, really. When I was at Loughborough, Chris O'Callaghan, a Welsh fellow, was captain. He was one former coach during the game and one former coach during in the changing room. From there, with captains like him, then I moved on to be coached by some great coaches, some really great coaches. The great Jim Greenwood at Loughborough. I was with him for 4 years. Rex Hazeldine, who was the first England physical training coach, he was there as well. And Rod Thorpe, who wasn't necessarily rugby as his specialist area, but he was an inspiration in the sort of games for understanding, game sense type of coaching. They all had an influence with me at Loughborough. When I left Loughborough, I went into teaching and automatically became a schoolmaster coach. Well, schoolmaster coaches, you're looking at all different ages of children, from the under 11s until the first 15. I was teaching in a rugby league school in Widnes, and there were more people on the touchline who knew much more about rugby than I certainly did, and certainly about rugby league at the time. And there were some great young players at St Joseph's at the time who went on to play for Great Britain. And quite honestly, as a coach, what you did was sort of light the blue touch paper and let them go, and sort of make sure they didn't get injured in training in the week, didn't do anything stupid in the week to injure them, so that they could just show you what they could do at the weekend, because they were just natural rugby players. And what it taught me was, look, if it don't try and impose something on somebody who's better than you are anyway. And that was really quite an early lesson. From there, I went and I coached at Lycée Bernard de Ventador in Ussel in France, which was a sport étude, one of the six centres of rugby excellence in the country. And I worked under a fellow called Pierre Perez, who went on to coach France under 21s and for quite a number of years. There, I started to learn about what the French system looked like, and the French system in those days, and it's only just getting itself sorted out now, was a question of two conflicting bodies. One were the educationalists, the pedagogues, as the French would like to call them, and the realists, the lads who worked on the coalface and in clubs from week to week. And there was a real conflict. And I sort of watched Pierre in the middle of this. He had some guest coaches come in. The great Pierre Villepre came in a few times, and his sort of jouet philosophy was quite at odds with the lad who was coaching the local team at the time. And they had sort of very good heated conversations about what rugby really was all about. From there, I came back from France and taught at Mount St Mary's College in Derbyshire. I coached the first 15 there. I was head of physical education there. Was very, very, very lucky in that Chalky White, another great coach, was running RFU coaching courses at Mount St Mary's, using our students as guinea pigs, if you like. And I had the opportunity to sit down with him over a few glasses of whatever or a cup of coffee and just listen to him talk about rugby and let him question me. It was really quite difficult. He was a little bit of a Columbo figure, because you respected him enormously, and everybody talked about Chalky at the time and his knowledge. And you felt a little bit of a sort of, what am I doing in the same room as him? How can I possibly have a conversation with this bloke about rugby when he, he's a demigod, if you like. And you sort of come away from the situation. You think, oh, I've just got away with it. I don't think he's seen through how little I know about it. And then you'd be walking out the room and he said, yeah, just one more question. And it was like the last question that did you, and he pulled you in. He taught you how to think a little bit laterally about rugby and really question everything. In a very similar way to Jim Greenwood did at at Loughborough. Oh, from there, I had the opportunity to coach with when rugby went professional in '95. I went to Rotherham, and they were down the leagues at the time, and myself and a couple of other lads helped bring them up the league, particularly the players who were very good. And at the same time, I was coaching England under 21s with a fellow called Keith Richardson. Keith Richardson was a very experienced coach from Gloucester who taught me a lot about actually chilling out, about not being too anxious and not trying to change the world in a day, sort of thing. He taught me a lot. At the same time, I helped at Loughborough, coaching the first team at Loughborough University, because Rex Hazelden, who was the coach at the time, had gone off to help with England. So I did 3 years coaching at Loughborough, and then they followed on for that 3 years at Cambridge University with Tony Rogers, who just taught me how to play Scrabble, which was pretty good. I enjoyed the Scrabble times with Tony and the wine, really. But in those days, the Oxford-Cambridge game was a very, very important game, and I came across some really exceptional players and enjoyed that experience. And at the same time, I was coaching Cambridge University and Rotherham, which there was a little bit of contrast in the personnel. It was, I remember my first game as head coach at Rotherham. I'd got the players in the change room just before the game, 10 minutes before, and I was telling them, this is this and this is that and this is the other, bells of Shannon and all that sort of stuff. Look round and said, right, over to the captain. Look round for the captain, John Dudley. Where's John? He said, well, he always is 10 minutes before a game, Jed, he's having a fag. And so that was a little bit different from the situation at Cambridge. From there, I went to from Rotherham. I went to Orrell for a while. I went for a season. They'd just come down from the Premiership and wanted to go back up. I'd been a player there. Sammy Southern, the chairman, asked me to go and try and and help that. That didn't really work. I was there for a year. Went back to Rotherham. They accepted me back. I enjoyed that. We went up that year to the Premiership, and I went to London Irish. I spent an interesting 9 months there with Dick Best as the head coach, who had the most sulphuric sense of humour you'd ever come across, but at the same time a very, very good rugby brain. So there you're picking up sort of the way people react to different guys. And Dick, even though he could be really, really difficult with people at times, I think the players actually love playing for him. From there, I stopped. I coached England under 21s for 3 years, and I coached England at the same time at London Irish. I was England A coach for 2 years, the head coach for 2 years, and I stopped. I stopped coaching. I got a bit fed up with it. I had a bit of a fractured relationship with the England head coach at the time, and anyway, I stopped. And then I got a phone call from nowhere to say, would you like to come and coach in Spain? So I went and coached Spain for 6 years. I was their national coach for 6 years. That was fantastic. It sort of brought back my love of rugby. The guys were sort of very much not even semi-pro. They were they had a little bit of money from playing rugby, but most of them had a full-time job and training the rest of the time. And basically, they just enjoyed playing and loved the experience of traveling to other countries and playing against them. After 6 years, we made a bit of a difference there. We came up from about 31st in world rankings to 20th in world rankings in those 6 years, and the nucleus of that team, the better, quicker players in that team, were the guys who eventually qualified for the Olympic Games 7-a-side for Spain, which was a fantastic achievement for them. I left Spain to go to Leicester Tigers. I was their chief scout for 4 years, and then the head of rugby operations for 6 years, taking responsibility for the performance and development pathway. So that's basically what I've been, John.
Wow. And you remembered it all, which is a great effort.
I wrote it down. I realised I wouldn't remember it.
Just picking up on that journey, you talked about a lot of coaches who influenced you, but one of the things I noticed was you went to France for a long period. How did that experience in France? Because I know now you're back in France and you're still coaching. How has that influenced your coaching approach, having moved away from your home?
There are a couple of things that are really interesting about coaching in a different country that don't speak English. The first thing is you've got to be very precise in what you say, and you've got to learn how to be immediate in a language that you don't really understand. And then bit by bit, you can start to understand the changing room. You can start to understand the nuances of humour and sarcasm, etc. But the key thing at the beginning is learning how to get people to react to what you say very, very quickly, or understand what you want to say. That also, not just language, but language is a gateway into culture, and to learn really the culture of a country, to understand the lads who are playing, is very important. A good example is when I started play. I played for a year out in Ussel in France, and when I arrived in the change room for the first time, I shook hands with a few of the lads and got myself changed and got out training. It turned out that one of the blokes, the scrum half, I'd missed him. I hadn't shook hands with him. Perfectly. It was a mistake. It wasn't. I didn't on purpose. Anyway, this fella just wouldn't pass to me. So I spent 2 or 3 games as a fly half being missed out by the scrum half who was playing with me, because the first time we met, we'd not shook hands. You walk into a change room, you say hello to people, but you wouldn't necessarily make sure you shook hands with every single individual in the room. But that culture is very, very important. So there were certain things that I had to learn culturally.
Yeah, and that stepping out of your comfort zone, that must have been quite tricky. Did you speak French before you went?
Oh, not a word. I was absolutely rubbish at French at school. In fact, Madame Rimmer, the head of modern languages at the school I went to, had me in a pair of she's moving, and gave me the bells of Shannon, and watched my mother hit me with a diamond ring on the side of my face, and the side of my face was bleeding like heck. While she didn't stop, she just kept giving me. No, I was I think I got 6% for French and 8% for Spanish in my at school.
It's amazing, isn't it, that what happens at school isn't always translate onto what happens in later life. That's really interesting. Let's start talking a little bit about your the way you like to play. So, if I was to give you a magic wand, you can have any players you like to do whatever you want. How would you like them to play the game?
Oh, I'd need some forwards to be physically dominant. I'd need 1 or 2 backs to be physically dominant. I'd need players who can think for themselves and respond to situations, like creating some form of advantage by physical dominance, and after the physical dominance, then start to play very much like the Welsh sides of the 60s and 70s, to be honest. Kick hell out of everybody, and then let the Fleur boys play a bit.
And with fitness changing and bringing on 7 or 8 players with 20 minutes to go, how's that affected the way you'd like to play when the pitch is the same size, but they're fitter, stronger, faster players now? Has that affected the way you'd like to play the game?
Well, to be honest, you just need the better bench. If you've got a bench which can dominate their bench after 60, 70 minutes, then you normally if you're in the game with an hour and you've got a better bench, you're going to win the game. So it means that in-game coaching, as in deciding when and where to make changes, is much more important than it ever was. Coaching really in the past, when I did most of my coaching, was pre-game, a little bit at half-time, and maybe one or two words of wisdom passed on with the water boy. Now the whole dynamics of that is completely different, and there's a whole team of guys who are actually feeding you with information of what is actually going on in the field, as well as what you are actually seeing with your own eyes. So it has changed and will change enormously going forward.
And you have a unique insight into France, not only played there, coached there, and now lived there. And you look at the current way the French team plays. You talked earlier about Villepreux, Jouet. How would you describe their playing style at the moment?
Quite simply, just keep the ball off the floor. They've got physical dominance. They're trying to create physical dominance. They've got players who can play in space, but they have lots of players who like to attack branches rather than tree trunks. Go at arms and play after the tackle or during the tackle, keeping the ball off the floor, not going through one, two, three, four pods and then deciding what to do. Toulouse, the club side, do it incredibly well. If you want to describe the way they play now, it's keep it off the floor.
And the other unique insight you've got is your son's playing in France. How has he managed that transition from perhaps playing in the UK to then going to play in France? What have you noticed about your son making that transition as well as a player?
Yeah, he was born here. He was born in France and then educated in England and went through the Tigers Academy. But after the Tigers Academy, he went to La Rochelle, who, as you know, it's an Irish fellow who basically runs the club. So he had the opportunity to have a French side which had a little bit of an English-speaking philosophy, if you like. So it wasn't that difficult, for him. He's now gone down to Béziers with a French coach and French and a more sort of. You've gone really from the academic side. La Rochelle is more sort of the sort of pedagogue sort of based side with a little bit of pragmatism to the real pragmatism of the Pro 2 in France, and it's a very steep learning curve. It's tough for him. Yeah,
but he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's enjoying it. It's a great experience. He's been a bit spoiled, hasn't he? He went to a nice school where he played rugby. He went to a good academy where he played rugby. He went to another good academy in France where he played rugby. He's had really good, nice experiences, and now he's got to learn a little bit about battling for it.
And you just make sure he shakes hands with everyone, otherwise he won't be getting the ball much.
He explains the customs to me.
Yeah. So we know how you like to play. How do you like to coach it? What's your approach to coaching?
Yeah, that's changed. It's changed with every influence. When I started coaching, of course, I've just stopped playing and started coaching. I know everything. I know I've got all the answers. I know every single thing to say to a player before a game. I know everything to say to them at half time. And if they don't respond to that, it's them at fault, not me. That's how I started. I was omnipotent, and I'm quite happy to be omnipotent because I didn't realise I didn't know what I didn't know, which it's a quite happy state. That it's quite a nice place to be. Everybody thinks you're a bit of a knob, but you excuse the language, but you're quite happy because you think you know it all. From then, as I said, the different coaches I'd sort of met and come across, I realised how little I did actually know, and how much I had to sort of adapt and learn, and how I'd had to adapt in different clubs and different teams, how I had to adapt and learn to work with the people in front of me. And what is a coach? I mean, you don't really want a coach, the team to be as good as the coach. You want the team to be as good as the potentiality of the team, and and learning how to release that as well, it's an ongoing learning.
Are there any sort of, we talk about getting the basics right as a player, are there any basics we should be getting right as a coach?
That's a really good question, and one that I need a little bit of time to think about. What you really need to get right about a coach. Remember that it's them that's playing, not you. To paraphrase Pierre de Coubertin, if it's not democratic, it's not worthwhile. What the team do on the field has got to be a reflection of the team and what they can do, and not just a sort of, sometimes you see in football and in French rugby, the coach is standing on the touchline and the camera's on the coach as much as he's on the game. I really don't think that's right. I really don't think that's a good way for a coach to go forward. Those are the two things, I think.
How do you play that when the pressure comes on? Say with Spain, who, as you said, the players weren't that experienced, but they're in a pressure situation, and they're naturally starting to look towards you or your assistant coach when there's a big problem. How do you manage that situation when they clearly want direction and help? They don't have the answers themselves because of their experience. How do you bridge that gap as a coach?
Sometimes you fail. You don't bridge the gap because maybe you haven't got the answers either. If you haven't prepared the players properly in the first place to react to situations with intelligence, then it's probably your fault in the first instance that you haven't given them enough tools to meet the problems. A good example was with Spain. First couple of times I coached them, we played a couple of games, Russia and Georgia, I think, and we lost both the games very narrowly. And the scrum half, Pablo, had tapped and gone about 3 or 4 times in his own in their 22, and we'd lost by a couple of points in either game. And I'd obviously sort of not been enormously enamoured by this, but coming from a situation where you always build a score and make sure that if you take your points and that sort of thing. And so we played a pre-season warm-up game against Cambridge University in Cambridge, and we played them there. I hadn't been back to Cambridge since I'd coached, and obviously wanted to win, and we lost by a point, and Pablo tapped and went 4 times in the 22. I was absolutely apoplectic after the game and got the lads in the change room. I sort of, blurted on for about 10 minutes in perfect Widnesian English to these Spanish lads who didn't understand a word of what I was saying, but certainly understood the emotion behind it. Anyway, halfway through this tirade, the door opened behind me, and I sort of kicked it closed without looking at it. Sadly, the doctor was coming through at the time with the water bottles, crouching down, and the catch on the door took his eye, and he had 16 stitches and knocked him out. So the doctor's flat out in the change, outside the change room at Cambridge. I closed the door, and anyway, I came out. So what the hell's up with him? He said, anyway, I'd gone off and I didn't realise what had happened. Anyway, eventually found out what the score was, and went and apologised to him and his wife and his family and every relative that could have possibly come anywhere near me. And but it wasn't forgotten. So we're playing Romania in Madrid in a World Cup qualifier, and I'd spoken to the players just before the game, left the change room, stood outside the change room with the lad who did a lot of translating for me, a lad called Keith Chapman. Anyway, he starts killing himself laughing about 2 minutes before kickoff. And I said, Keith, come on, it's serious. It's a World Cup qualification. What are you laughing at? He said, you didn't understand what Pablo said to the lads, did you? I said, no. He said, and what he said was, lads, when we get into the 22, we take the bloody points or Ged will kill the doctor. So I suppose there's different ways of getting your point across, but I suppose physical violence to the medical profession is probably not the best way to.
Yeah, but they tend to take it very well because they love being there. It sort of leads me to my next question in and around the culture you like to create. I'm sure that one of fear and threat is probably not what you're after. What sort of culture do you like to have within your teams?
Look, there's a lot of difference, but if you've been paid a shed load of money and people are paying a shed load of money to come and watch you, to what I was doing in Spain, for instance. So the motivation for the lads in Spain, because they wanted to enjoy playing their rugby, enjoy being with the mates, enjoy the aftermatch and that sort of thing. So it really was quite an enjoyable sort of fun.
And one of the things that we talk about a lot in Wales is coaches that go away, and you've been away, and there's a few coaches been away, and I know you support one of the coaches coaching in France. Would you encourage coaches from Wales to try and get outside of the country? Do you think that would benefit them as coaches?
Depends where they went. Certainly not to go into a comfort zone, go into a situation where they could be stretched, either by the coaching ability or the language ability, or just for the experience of actually being outside that sort of so-called comfort zone. And so yes, to go and just go somewhere so they can earn more money, yeah, that's good. It's good. Earning money is good. It's good, but to how are you going to progress? How are you going to get the where you actually want to be? The rugby coaching career is not an enormously longer time. It's longer than possibly a playing career, but there's not many people get the opportunities to coach. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to travel. I mean, for 10, 15 years of my life, I never paid to get on an aeroplane. A federation or a union paid for me to get on an aeroplane. And when I went into a stadium, I always had a good seat. And I went to Béziers on Friday night to watch them play Oyonnax, and I was stood up and I had to pay €5 to do it. So it's yeah, exactly.
Mind you, €5, that's a good deal to watch. What was that Pro D2?
Yeah, Pro 2, yeah, and there was quite a decent crowd on it. It was quite a decent game. There are some good games in Pro 2, to be fair. Yeah.
So we're coming towards the end of our time, and I'd just like to ask you, I hope this isn't too tricky a question, but if you look back on your career and you were to take one thing that you would change and one thing you'd recommend to the coaches who might be listening in, what one thing would you change and what one thing would you recommend to the coaches?
I stopped playing too early to go to basically to get a steady job, because there's nothing like playing. So if you can keep playing, keep playing. The next best thing is coaching, and after that, the further away you get away from the rugby ball, actually touching the rugby ball, the less interesting the game is. So try and keep playing as long as you can, and play with good people and learn from good captains, good coaches. And then if you get the opportunity to coach, and it is an opportunity, then try not to think. I mean, I remember going to. I took a group of English coaches to 3 clubs in France, to Brive, to Aurillac, and to Clermont when I was in at Leicester. I took a group of coaches, and the attitude to what they saw was so defensive. Oh, we don't do it like that. We do it like this. We don't. That's rubbish. That's no good. And it was like one of those judging before understanding. So for me, it is, yeah, get out there. If it's a good opportunity, go and have a look at something else and try to understand what's going on and try to understand the people you're working with before you judge them.
And if any of the coaches listening would like to pick up with you on understanding more about the French or Spanish or overseas experience, would you be happy for them to get in touch? And I'll give them a shout.
Yeah, no, absolutely no problem at all. I mean, I'm not sure how much help I'd be, but I'll certainly be as much help as I can be.
That's brilliant. Look, Ged, it's been marvellous spending some time with you and talking through your journey and your coaching philosophy, your playing philosophy, and that cultural philosophy. Really useful for the coaches. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to the next Meet the Coach in the next few weeks. So for today, Ged, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, John.